So that is officially 7 o'clock. It's the start of the Fairbanks Watercolor Society's meeting, monthly meeting of April 2020. We were all caught by surprise when we had to give up our last in-person face-to-face meeting and come up with plan. When you're ready to turn it over to Todd, I'll switch the buttons.
Because I can't hear Pam.
Hello, Todd, and it appears we're having a little bit of audio difficulty with Pam.
I didn't hear the introduction.
And she did a very good job in your...
And I'll just thank her for that lovely introduction, even though I couldn't hear it. And I can't read lips, but that's okay. Being a visual person, I still have time to learn. In case she didn't say it, my name's Todd Sherman. I'm a professor of art at the university. I'm also the dean of the College of Liberal Arts. But more importantly, well, most importantly, I'm a father. But after that, I'm an artist. Well, my wife might say I'm a husband. Who knows? But the part that I enjoy most about this life, that's been a steady part of my life throughout my life, is my art. And I'm going to show some images of mine over the years, a few recent works, and I'm going to slip to the slideshow right now. That's okay, John?
It's visible, and your introductory slide is visible.
And that's about all you need to see, right? You don't see the desktop. We're good to go.
We're good to go.
Okay. So, my name Todd Sherman, artist. What you're going to see here are slides, and I'll try to give you when. I didn't have the time to put all the dates of when these were created. But these are all works by mine, unless I say otherwise. There we go, back at it. So this is from my most recent show in September. This is a cutout, and I do paintings on with acrylics on Baltic birch plywood, and this is a roughly life size, and then I have wooden bases made for this. A lot of my works, almost all my works, in the recent 10 or 15 years have been portraits. And by portraits, you can see that they're not only animal portraits, but human portraits as well. I consider humans animals, and they have not let me down in that regard. So some of these will have text, and you can read it for yourself. I won't read it, but I'm going to talk about my artwork, and mostly Alaska, and the inhabitants, which would be animal and human. And these are inspirations and influences for my artwork. This is a little bit about me. I was born in Anchorage last century, and my father, if you see him in the middle of the screen at that time, somewhere around 1962, he is an engineer, and we left the state in 1959 because he didn't think we should become a state. He figured we should remain a territory, or if you had to do something, be a commonwealth. And I'm not sure. I didn't know much about it then, and I don't have a great idea on why he left the way he did. But then we came back after I had finished high school down in America. Some of my influences as a youngster were, on the left, you can see the painting of a ringtail cat and a California quail by Luis Aguez Fuertes. Did great animals. I've always been interested in animals my whole life. And so my parents were very supportive of me becoming an artist, my grandparents as well. And then, of course, the natural world, and who hasn't been influenced by Disney? And course, National Geographic magazine. And I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Bailey, although I'm not sure she's still with us. She is my 4th grade teacher, and she's the one who got me interested in Audubon bird cards, and the artist who did that. Another one of the great artists, Ernest Thompson Seton, who was also a wonderful storyteller. This is one of his paintings. And of course, we're seeing it from the viewpoint of a passenger on a, I'm going to assume it's some kind of a coach or a sleigh being pulled by horses. You might say it's a little bit exaggerated, but it's very good anatomically. And that crease on the right, that's just a photo from a book. And then you could read some of my other influences up above. A good friend, Peter Haley, who introduced me to Mad Magazine. And then, of course, I spent a lot of time in museums and libraries growing up. And these two people, I first saw their work at a museum show, the Tacoma Art Museum, down in Tacoma, when I was, I'm going to guess I was about 6th grade or so. And it was a Russell and Remington show. So I really got inspired by the work of these two fellows. I particularly think Charles Russell is a great visual storyteller. Frederick Remington is an incredible painter. And I know a lot of folks might consider them illustrators, but they are craftspeople in the Old West. They are fantastic artists. Another one of my most favorite artists is Bob Kuhn, and this is a painting by Bob Kuhn of a polar bear. And he is truly a painter, and probably more than anything else, he's a colorist. He can handle color. And by painter, I mean he's describing a scene. In this case, it's wildlife, again, one of my favorite things, but also in the far north. But he's using paint to describe the form. You can't easily see the linear quality of his work. So by paint, he's using value, which is the tone, or color, different colors as values to shape the figure and the landscape. Some of the other artists are listed up there. Rembrandt is a fabulous artist. Da Vinci, of course, who can beat Da Vinci? Matisse, great, great artist. Gauguin, mainly because of the passion in his works. Bonnard, for Pierre Bonnard, French painter, just incredible colorist and great. He really pushed the idea of form and figure. And Watteau, the great French artist, whatever. And then here at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, I took classes from Bill Brody, Terry Choi, and probably the most influential of the teachers is Bill Barry. And if you've been in Fairbanks around in Fairbanks for a while, you've undoubtedly seen Bill Barry's work. It's most noticeable at the library, that big mural in the children's room in the Nolween Library. He started that, and unfortunately his life ended tragically and too soon in 1979. That was the year I graduated from the University of Alaska Fairbanks with an art degree. This is one of his field sketches of bears, and it's the sheet itself is 8.5 by 11 inches, and you can see how finely wrought these drawings are. He also did, using his anatomical skills of animals, he did quite a bit of work that was entertaining and humorous, and this is an example of one of his Christmas cards. In this case, this is a card for the library he created in 1978, about a year before he died. And he's just got a fantastic ability to render animals. I don't know if many of you have seen this. This is a color sketch of a map which went into print probably in the 60s and 70s, and it's been out of print for decades now. But the map itself is around 2 feet by 3 feet, 24 inches by 36 inches. Don't ask me to do the metric translation. Vladimir can help you out with that, I'm sure. But this is, like I said, it's a preliminary color sketch. This is 4 inches tall by 6 inches wide. Gives you an idea of how much creative ability, but also determination to draw and make sense. So in other words, that wolf you see in the top right, walking across the tundra, might be 1/4 of an inch tall. So this is one of the more phenomenal works I've ever seen of anyone do this. The actual full-scale map is a great work. This is another one of his drawings. This is from the picture file and not from his field sketches, but it's based on his life studying animals. And he spent a lot of time in Camp Denali. Actually knew the people, the Woods and Celia Hunter, and worked with them, he and his wife Liz. And this again is an 8.5 by 11 inch drawing. Just fantastic understanding of anatomy and great line work, and it's an incredible balance within the work. A nice graphic design. This is an artist from Europe, Bruno Lilliefors, and I think he's Swedish. He could be Norwegian, but I think he's Swedish. And this is a large painting which I have not seen in person, but it's somewhere about 3 or 4 feet tall. And this is incredible depiction of wildlife by Bruno Lilliefors, who's another artist that, if you're fortunate enough to see his originals, take that opportunity. Another artist whom I feel like I discovered, even though many thousands and millions of people have known his work through the book Gnomes, is a Dutch artist, Rien Portvliet. And this book I picked up on a trip to Europe when I was my sister's chaperone. I think it was her 18th birthday present, and we went to the Olympics in 1976, and we stopped over in Copenhagen, and I picked this book up at a bookstore because of the drawings of this guy, who's an incredible wildlife artist, among many things. He's quite a creative artist, Rien Portvliet, and he passed away probably 10 or 15 years ago. This is one of my drawings that I did when I was in graduate school. This is about 80 inches wide and 40 inches tall, and this is just charcoal on paper. And the title of that, Silent Forest. And I took that theme of wolves in the woods and how we can't really see them very well, and how as they go through the trees they are lost then found. And they've just always been a mystery to me, but also visually I think I've tried to depict them pretty much my whole life, and I'm still trying to get the right wolf. The one person who I thought who could draw the wolf so well was Bill Berry. But I pushed it in different areas. I'm working with lights and darks, and this is a lithograph that I did when I was in graduate school. And when I came back to Fairbanks after graduate school in the 80s, mid-80s, I worked still with the same theme, and this is Silent Forest. This is a large woodcut. And this is about, I think it's about 40 inches wide and 24 or so inches tall. And it's the same thing, but a different material, medium, but I'm still working with the same subject matter. I've always loved to draw, and I tried drawing, or I used to draw every day, and I haven't been that successful until fairly recently, since I've been, as most of us have been, under home quarantine, so to speak. So this is my son Connor. This is at the turn of this century, 97, actually on the other side of it. And this was a toy that was a battery-powered pen, so you turned it on and it scribbled. It just moved back and forth in short little arcs and stuff. So I tried doing a drawing of him using this pen as a challenge. So that's another way to do drawing, but forced by this little pen to create with what looks like some kind of a palsy, but it was all manufactured. This is our dog Buckwheat in a pose that was quite She's quite consistent. Oops, there we go. Let me get back to it. Gosh, I shouldn't touch this thing. There we go. Are we back, John? Can
I
you
had
hear
my
me?
mic muted. Yes, you're
Okay.
back. I muted
Okay,
my
good.
mic and have been chatting online with some folks, commending you on your presentation.
Oh, good. So they can't
So,
hear me.
no, they can hear you just fine. And since we're interrupted, I'd like to take this minute to announce my cell phone number. That's 322-0623. And if anybody has any questions of Todd, send the questions to me at my cell, 322-0623. And when Todd's finished, if he's willing, I'll go ahead and I'll give him the questions. It's up to him whether or not he's willing to answer after he's through with his presentation. Go ahead, Todd. I'm finished.
Okay. Great. Thanks. Okay, this is Buckwheat. This is our dog, a large shepherd mix. And I just think drawing is a great way to get to know the world around you. It's always a challenge. I've been drawing so I'm 65 years old now. I've been drawing probably since I was 3 or 4, and I still think I need more practice. In Alaska, we are blessed and sometimes cursed by our surroundings. But this is up near Nome, on the beach near the city of Nome. And I've gone out and done field drawings. I've done a lot more when I was younger. I haven't done so much lately, but I spent a lot of time outdoors doing landscapes and drawings. And usually I'll travel with an artist friend or two to spend time out in the field to do works. But this is a photograph of some of the scenery up outside of Nome. And this is a field work done down south of Cordova near Hartney Bay for an Artist for Nature's adventure, I should call it. But it's a project to draw attention to our wild landscape. In this case, it's the Copper River Delta. And there's a book that was produced related to this. And there was 2 sets of artists, one that came in 94 or thereabouts, and the others came in 96 or 97. And I was in that second group of artists, and we spent time. And it was probably one of the most rewarding times of my life. Get to be outdoors, working with fellow artists from around the world, and drawing in Alaska, in this case, the Copper River Delta. That's not my cover photo. That's a Russian, Vadim Gorbata. I'm not quite sure, but he's a great artist of birds and animals. And that was his watercolor painting of the bald eagle. On the left is I don't really do much in watercolor. I will use acrylics and thin them out and treat them like an aquarelle. But that's my picture on the left of a landscape. Afterwards, we were staying at a cannery in Cordova, and we had all kinds of great fresh fish, salmon and halibut. And we sit around, drink wine, and talk to some of the locals and the artists. And right here, I didn't have my drawing pad with me, so I picked up the business cards from the cannery and I drew these portraits on the card. So this is basically a 2 by 3.5 inch portrait in both these cases. So Ricky Ott, that's the woman. She used to live in Cordova, and she's the one who wrote the book on Copper River Delta. Now the weather's not always great out there in the field. In this case, I spent the day. I went down to Montague Island by myself. I took a flight down there and stayed at I think a fish and wildlife cabin. Maybe it's a forestry cabin with some of the crew that had summer work there. But the wind was howling. It was a time of year where the bears are coming out. And Montague probably has the largest brown bears outside of Kodiak or the Alaska Peninsula. They're really large. So I was in this tent by myself. The wind was howling all night. The guys in the cabin had given me a shotgun. I'm not sure if I was going to blow my foot off or get the bear. But anyway, this is my field sketch of the time I spent in the tent. And it was blown like heck. It was a great experience, but it was 2 days away from those artists up in Cordova. These are some of my field sketches from that time that I've had in the sketchbook. And usually when I draw, I work with pencils. Occasionally, as you can see in the lower drawing, that's some kind of a marker, a brush pen. And those are all done from life. These are some other works from this time frame. And they're little compositional sketches, and I think drawing is really important, not only to artists and designers, but to pretty much everybody, because it makes you slow down. You start to look at how the world is ordered around you, and within your own head, you figure it out, and you get the signal sent down your arm to the pen or pencil onto paper, and you get to view the world around you. And this is a record of it. I've always been fascinated by animals, but also their environments. In this particular case, these two paintings, the one on the left is about 32 inches tall, 20 inches wide maybe, and the one on the right is 80 inches tall and 40 inches wide, and they're both acrylic on canvas. But the one on the right is it's a painting I've done based on a drawing, pretty much the same size, where the animals, in both these cases, the animals are lost or only partially visible through the trees. Forest, big part of mine. Those of you might know that I've got a painting that's part of this year's KUAC fundraising poster. It's a polar bear portrait, which I don't have in this slideshow, but another painting of mine, Christie's Forest, which I did. Christie's my wife's name, and this is the view of her cabin, from her cabin in the woods. It's out in Goldstream. And I love our black spruce trees. They are so evocative, the shapes they have, and I don't mind viewing a drunken forest. I might have been that way sometimes, but I think it's a great and exciting way to depict living things other than wildlife. And I think the black spruce are so vital in that sense. So this painting was a precursor to the painting I did, Christie's Forest, which was another KUAC poster around 2001. And these are drawings I've just done on walks in the woods. In this case, there's snow. And the one in the top left turned into an oil on paper drawing later. So I think it's really important to get information from where you are in the wild or even in the house and just draw firsthand. And these will be the beginnings of paintings, perhaps. This is a large painting. I say large, it's about 40 by 60 inches. And this is acrylic on board. And I just find snow and the shapes that it makes in the ground and the leaves or the trees and how it kind of imposes its will over time and bends the branches down to the ground. It's a force that we can see over time, but it's also visually, it's one of the more dynamic things that we get to see because they're strong white and black. A lot of the color goes out in snow scenes, but they are so sensuous and they catch light and they wrap it around, and it's really a joy to paint and draw. A big challenge. And this is another one. So the other one, the one before this one here was painted right outside I didn't paint it outside, I did the drawings and sketches. And then it was right outside the kitchen, and this is down at Cripple Creek. And this is about a 48 by 32 inch, if I even have the dimensions right, oil on linen. The other one was acrylic on board. This is acrylic on canvas, again in the series of the shadowy wolves in the landscape, and this time it's color versus charcoal on paper, and the beautiful skies we have and the mysterious trees and forests, and then the animals that, in this case, they lurk among them. As I said earlier, I do a lot of portraits, and my portraits deal with animals, all kinds of animals. I've done a lot of humans. I've done probably over 1,000 portraits of humans, basically of kids at my classmates of my own children in their local schools. In this series, these are all separate pieces of animals. Most of them are fairly realistic, but you can see 3 or 4, maybe roughly half of them are more or less anthropomorphic, and the rest of them are based on fairly naturalistic representations of the animals. I put them in the same context, a portrait, taller than it is wide, example of creatures, but human paintings. So these are unrealistic in the sense that animals would pose for me like humans would, but I'm taking that same idea and I'm putting them in that context. The one, so that some of these are intended to be humorous. I hope you find them humorous, or if you get upset with me with anthropomorphism, that could be one of the questions, sure. I've done a lot of portraits, as I said. In this case, these are 2 of my son's classmates on a long field trip. We took the bus from Fairbanks up to the Arctic Refuge, up to Galbraith Lake, and camped out there and hiked into Arctic Refuge. And these are portraits I did that 2 or 3 days. I was the expedition artist, and I drew the kids a lot of examples. These are just Conte on paper. I really enjoyed Conte, the softness of it, and it smudges pretty easily, but not too easily. These are portraits of my daughter's classmates at different times. These are 20 years ago or so, and I will draw portraits of all the kids in their classes, and it's a great exercise. It's really challenging. You can never really capture the beauty of a human being, particularly a small and young one, or at least I can't. But I've done, like I said, hundreds of these, and these are 11 by 17 inches, give or take. And they'll be drawings. I'll use graphite and Conte, and then I'll paint over with acrylic and quite often water it down so it's more of an aquarelle. This is a little 8 by 10 portrait called Juvenile, and this is a portrait of my son. At the time, let's just say young humans can get into mischief, and this is how I saw my son at the time. He's looking for trouble. And this is a more contemporary work. This is a cutout polar bear that is kind of a companion piece to the walrus. And it's acrylic on 1/4-inch Baltic birch. And then I display them with a wooden base. Some of you might have seen them. I try to have a show every year or so, and I have it down at Site 250 in the Railroad Industrial District. My good friend David Mollett's the gallery owner, and he and I have been working together for decades now. And I'm fortunate enough to know him, and I try to get a show there every year or two, as it forces me to do the work. These are 2 other cutouts, separate pieces. This is not single piece. The one on the left is from this show this last fall, 2019, in September. And then the one is the year or so before that. This is a Canadian Jay, or camp robber. Again, acrylic on board, and there's some graphite to mark them up. And this is that walrus in the opening piece. And I've got a painting similar to this. It's a Wolverine portrait, again, a portrait of an animal, in this case a wild animal, Wolverine, which I've never been this close to and had sit still for me. So I base it on drawings, let's say I've done at the zoo, or sometimes I'll draw a nature show on television, I'll freeze frame it, and then I'll refer to photographs, often for coloration and variations that I can't always understand by looking at the animals. But this is a silk screen print with some hand coloring. It's 3 colors, and I think, I can't even pick out the colors. So black is one of them. I think green is another one. And then I hand color before the final black is screen printed over it. And so these are actually, if anybody's interested in these, you can check with David's gallery when it opens again. Some of those are available down there. This, 2 months ago, my son and I went down to Missoula, Montana, right before the COVID disaster or pandemic, or before it was declared a pandemic. And we went to the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival in Missoula. That is a great, there were over 200 films shown in about 10 days. I don't know if I saw 10% of those, but it's a great way to see it. So these are 2 people that work for the festival. I spent time, because my daughter works in the festival, and I offered to draw portraits of filmmakers and people related to the festival. And so in this case, I've done these portraits of people in the last couple of years down at the festival. Last year I did mostly pastel. This year I did watercolor. So here's some watercolors. And in this case, I gave these portraits away rather than keep them. But typically I keep the originals. But in this case, I just made fairly decent scans of these. And they're, again, about 11 by 17 inches. And they're done from life, and they take about an hour or so. Now, since we're under hunker down orders and social distancing, my wife, myself, and my son live at our house here in the college area. And we started about 3 weeks ago, my son and I, doing a portrait off, because he's fairly talented too. I'm just trying to get him draw more, so we made it into not so much a competition, but a way that we can work. So we do portraits of each other, and we set it about 10 minutes. I usually go over. He calls it cheating. I said I'm just working on them longer. And in this case, this is a brush pen. I might have started out with some graphite, and then I finished up coloration with acrylic. So this is about 11 minutes or so, this particular one. And I really enjoy working quickly because I know that they're not complete and they're good sketches, but the vitality of the mark. So this is my picture of him, and this is his drawing of me. So this is the 12th one in the series. And I've always felt it humbling to draw others and try to capture them. I really don't care to have my portrait drawn. I kind of like to think of myself as a 22-year-old. It's not going to happen that I'm going to be 22 forever, but in my head, I try to think that way. It hasn't worked on the outside, though, because I'm starting to look like an old gray man. But anyway, my son's doing a pretty good job doing these drawings. There's another one of them. This is a Conte drawing. I'm trying to give him a lesson here and there. I actually do have a neck, but in this case, again, it's a pretty good drawing. It's vital and it's kind of fun. And this is about 10 minutes. He and I both have the same time. And this is one we did the beginning of April, thereabouts, and a drawing. This is about a 15-minute. So I drew it, did 10 minutes, and I painted it for another 15. So that's about 25 minutes. Exorbitant amount of time on these works. And these are anywhere 11 by 17 to 11 by 14. This is just a process piece of a painting I did years ago of a portrait. So it's on a board. It's a plywood signboard, actually, which has got a cardboard covering. And then I coated it with gesso, and I drew into it with Conte. And I marked a little bit into the gesso when it was there. And I really like the way this works, and it's simple, straightforward. But of course, I got to keep going and paint it. So the painting has different qualities. I add color, but it's essentially the same portrait, some more colors. I think they're two different pieces, even though one is now under the other piece. As I've said, I've done a lot of portraits, animal portraits. The title of this one is called Portrait in a Lamb's Wool Sweater. And I don't know who owns the original of this, but this was sold decades ago. It's so much fun to do these things because I don't have to worry too much. I feel compelled to draw fairly naturally because Bill Berry is my teacher, but then I can go outside and do these anthropomorphic pieces. I had a show down in Anchorage, ooh gosh, almost 25, 30 years ago now, and this was the title of my show, Anthropomorphism, Is It Wrong? So I did a lot of portraits of animals and human costume and human, basically portraits sitting up. And I actually had a few people who agreed with me, or the title anyway, that anthropomorphism, it is wrong. So there's some of the, and I was actually kind of thinking that we anthropomorphize almost everything, and I was kind of, it was a tongue-in-cheek, but I was interested to find out that people were very serious that anthropomorphism is wrong. And this is a series, not a series, but a painting I started out as because I've taught printmaking, and this would be a monotype. It's a piece of plexiglass, and I drew with inks on this, and then the idea was to print it, run it through the press, and I did it 2 or 3 times, and each time I added more inks to it and did a series of prints there. But then I liked the finished drawing, the painting so much that I left it up there and worked on it just a little bit. But this is called Katrin and the Fumes. She was in the print shop and she worked with this oil-based inks and solvents, and the fumes are just terrible. And I told her that that's not healthy. Try to stay with, but she got beautiful prints. There's a price to pay, I think. But anyway, the fumes I've depicted as a shark. This is, I think, 9 by 12 portrait of a short-eared owl. So back to the anthropomorphism. This is the one on the right that's actually a print of a drawing that I made into a plate, a photosensitive plate, and printed it up. And it's a bikini bear. And a continuation on the same thing, this is a poster for summer sessions, the 2005 summer catalog. And in the back, and I don't think I have the current, actually I do in another slide, but if you saw that other polar bear piece, in the background was a polar bear in an inner tube, a floaty, whatever. And so I actually put that into this finished painting later, because the director of Summer Sessions, Michelle Bartlett, when she first saw this picture, she said, because it's a walrus, I want to say it's plainly that that's a walrus in the background. However, she thought it looked like something in a punch bowl. More portraits of kids. One on the right's high schooler, and the one on the left is an elementary schooler. And these are so much fun when they work out, but they're really challenged to get that way. And again, they're about 11 by 17. And it takes about an hour, give or take. More portraits of these kids. They're all adults now. All these kids are adults now. Who knows what they're doing? But it's really a challenge to capture the freshness and beauty of young people. Another portrait. This is an oil on board. I really like working in oil, but with kids, they take so long to dry, and I like using solvents with oil paints because what can happen with them, but they're not that safe to have around the house. So I use mostly acrylics, or have, for two reasons. One, you can clean them up with soap and water before they dry, and they dry fairly quickly. Oils would take days to dry, depending on which color, whereas acrylics will dry, especially in our low humidity landscape, they'll dry within minutes to tens of minutes. And then you can put another color over it, and you can be finished. And that way the kids don't, when they get into this, to my studio, they don't put their hands on it and smear it. I'm a printmaker. That's what I got my master's degree in from Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. And this is a series of prints that I did based on my kids and drawings and photographs of the family. And these are fairly large scale, almost life size in many cases. This is around 2000, the year 2000. These large prints hanging up in the Bear Gallery. This is just a detail. This is about a block. This is a block of wood that's 8 feet long, and I printed it on fabric and made it into a nice curtain. So the title of the show is Human Nature. And this is a 2-color print on Okawara paper. This is probably about 48 inches wide or thereabouts. It's roughly life-size fox. I like to do my animals life-size when I can. This is a small photo process print. In both cases, it's the same technique, but the one on the left, it's the same drawing. It's a transparency, and I expose it on this photosensitive emulsion. One on the left, it didn't work out, but it still turned out to be a cool print. The one on the right is closer to the drawing. So mistakes can work out for you. This is a monotype, which is printing ink on paper, but I draw the work. In this case, I drew from the portrait live. This is one of our printmaking students, Inari. She's from Finland. And this is 22 by 30 inches, and it's ink on the plexiglass and then run through the press once I've done the colors, and you can see where there's some solvent blendings and stuff. It's a really quick way to do things. Quick in the sense it takes about an hour or so. But you get other colors and you can run it through the press again and add colors to it. This is a woodcut that's actually still in a show that's touring the states. They selected printmakers from each of the 50 states, and we gave them a batch of prints, and they took a couple, and the other ones are distributed to the other artists, so I have a portfolio or two from the various artists. In this case, this show was most recently down in Louisiana, I think. And this is a series in 2003 where I did a bunch of woodcut portraits, and this one was from that same time, of animals. Occasionally I'll do animal outside of the North in North America. This is the lioness. So these are woodcuts. In other words, they're cut into wood and then inked up, and what isn't cut away catches the ink, and it's a relief print. This is a ghost print with solvent on it, and I didn't show you the first one, so I pulled a print of this monotype and then put a little solvent to clean it off, and I'm looking at it before I wipe the solvent off and clean off the plexi. I said, I'm going to run this through the press. So it's a great way to come up with some quick and fun ways of forcing your work to be seen in a different light. And that's the part I really enjoy about printmaking. There's a certain separation between me and the work versus a drawing. I'm directly applying marks to it. And the same thing with painting. This is a woodcut of my two oldest children, and there's sharks and kids. And I can't remember the title of this, it'll come to me, but it's basically who's more dangerous, the kids or the sharks? And of course, most people would agree the sharks are, but if you look at how many sharks the humans have taken out versus how many humans the sharks have taken out, it's obviously the humans that are more dangerous. This is a painting, a photograph by J.R. Anchetta, the UAF photographer. And in 2017, I did a mural in the lobby of the museum where people would come by and get their portrait taken. It was a selfie station. So I put about 7 polar bears in this painting and painted it up there as part of my job as the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts. It was a great summer. And that's the end. And I've got 6 minutes to go. I do have a slide or two after the end. It talks a little bit about Spain. Inspirations. So there's all kinds of things. So for me, the natural world includes not only the natural world, but everything we've constructed, what happens in nature, and we're part of nature, even if we build cities. So for me, the natural world encompasses a lot of things. I don't always think what we've done is a good thing, but they are there for our inspiration. This is just a slow shutter speed with a digital camera in a train station in Barcelona. And if you look real carefully, right around the middle of the picture, you can see a face, just ghost-like. So photography can be an incredible inspiration. I just don't like to copy photographs. I like to use them for reference and ideas and colors, and it's a way. I think I actually do take many more photos than I used to, but they're all on my phone. And I have an Instagram page if anybody's interested. Great things. This is Gaudí, some of his architecture in Barcelona. And there I am in 2003, painting in a little village in northeast Spain, right near the border with France, a little village called Capmine. And I'm painting in this village that we lived in for half of my sabbatical in 2003 in Spain. And that's my youngest, Julia, and she is now 25 years old, and she's the one who works in Missoula with the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival. And that's the painting I was doing then. And I think that gets us a little closer to 8 o'clock. I'm not sure. I'm going to ask John if I need to go directly to 8 or should I stop for questions at this time.
Todd.
Well, thank you.
Great job. I'm echoing the applause of all the people in the audience who are attending. That was a fantastic presentation. I really appreciated it, enjoyed it. Astounded by some of the work you have presented. I think you lived up to and perhaps exceeded many of the things that Pam said. Unfortunately, I was having technical problems with Pam's feed and we weren't getting her video in, and I take the responsibility for not solving the technological problems at the time, and ask Pam to forgive me and ask everybody to forgive me for that. We do have a lot of text with kudos and good job and congratulations, Todd, fantastic presentation and that sort of thing. So I'm sure you're used to hearing that sort of stuff.
No, not in my job as a dean, I'll tell you right now. Especially now when we're looking at just so I'm going to tell all of the people there, no matter what you think, there are good people working at the university. So support the university because I think they're doing a fantastic job. We transform lives. I think we're facing real challenges as everybody right now. but combined with the governor's cuts and vetoes of possible more money for the university, that's taking up most of my time dealing right now. And so I don't get kudos in my day job, let's just say. But so thanks very much.
Well, the people out in the art community here in the Watercolor Society sure appreciate what you're doing. We really appreciate you taking the time in your busy life and busy schedule to join us tonight at our meeting. And this is groundbreaking territory for us. This is the first time we had a meeting online. Like I said, the feedback I've got up to this point has all been positive in text messages and emails. I'd ask anybody who has any comments, suggestions, or critiques. You've got my name and phone number. Pass it on to me or Nelda or Pam. Let us know what you think about tonight's meeting format. We may do this again if it works out well. It seems, we had a few hills to climb and some technology challenges. Todd, I really appreciate your willingness to spend a couple of hours before this event rehearsing it with me and making sure we had everything under control.
Well, I should maybe amend my answer to Vladimir in his question to say the digital part is an area that I continue to explore. And just as this presentation has shown, that while I'm not really making creative work in that sense, but I'm using a new medium. And I appreciate your help with this, John, but it's another way that we get our work out there. And I'm appreciative of the people who appreciate my work, because I know quite a few of them myself that are in the Watercolor Society, and you guys are doing a great job.
Well, on behalf of the Watercolor Society, for all our members and everybody who's been holding this thing together for 20 plus years now, I was honored to be a part of this organization. I kind of stayed in the background for a long time and felt honored when I had this opportunity to serve and contribute. So I hope I'm adding something to the event. With that said, thanks again, Todd, and I'll say goodbye and good evening to all the folks who joined us tonight. We will definitely have another Fairbanks Watercolor Society meeting on the third Wednesday of May. Not sure if we're going to be able to meet in person at that time. At the moment, I kind of doubt that it would be the right thing for us to do. So we will make our plans to at least have a webinar presentation like this, or do it live, whatever fate brings us in May. But we're flexible. We rise to the challenge. A bunch of smart folks in the organization who helped put this whole thing together and helped me make it happen. Enjoyed the opportunity to do it, and I'm going to call it a wrap. Good night, everybody. Todd, good night. Thanks again for spending the time with us.
And thanks for spending time and teaching me some new stuff, John. This is as you said, a challenge, but I think you rose to it and we did well.
Hey, we did a fantastic job. Good night, everybody.
Stay in touch and maybe we can connect and find out more about that recording.
Okay, sounds